So come back anytime for a free day trial. Learn more about us at sandboxsuites.com. Okay, have a great evening, and I hope you get a lot out of this meetup. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky. So we have a great group of speakers today, and of course our awesome moderator who's going to speak more about what's happening, the latest and the greatest in the advertising industry. Before we get started, a brief introduction about SIPA. So SIPA is a non-profit organization which is dedicated to providing resources for professional development of our members. So essentially, SIPA organizes events, workshops, and networking sessions. Some of the events that we had in the past and what we're planning in this year include on topics like Bitcoin, wearable technology, mobile payments, and also workshops like hands-on with Hadoop and go-to-market workshop for entrepreneurs. This year we have a very interesting initiative. It is the Lean In Mentor Circle for our members. So borrowing on the concept of Sheryl Sandberg, what we are starting is a Lean In Circle open to both men and women. And the goal is to provide a safe environment where you can ask questions like, how do I position myself for the next promotion? Or how do I negotiate my pay raise? So more information, please sign up, please become a member because you have all these awesome resources at your disposal. So handing over to Ayushman, a brief introduction about Ayushman. Ayushman is a senior product manager at Udemy, where he's leading the audience analytics team. Before that, he worked at Yahoo, and he's got his MBA from MIT Sloan School of Business.
Thanks, Mala. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's panel discussion on the new age of advertising. We are all very excited to be here, and thanks to SIPA for putting this together. As Mala said, I work for Udemy, and for those of you people who are not aware of Udemy, it's a video advertising technology company that is focused on solving the challenges for the brand marketers. So in today's discussions, we are going to focus on three things. First, what is the current state of affairs in advertising? Second, where it is headed, what are the top trends and innovation that is going to change the face of advertising in the coming years? And lastly, but probably the most important one is, what are the career opportunities the industry offers to each one of us? And to have that discussion, we're very fortunate that we have with us a very talented and experienced set of analysts to share their experiences and thought on that. Each one of them have been building solutions and products that actually is defining the new age of advertising. Just next to me, I have Philip, who is from Turn. Next to him, Sunil from Exad, Dia from Google, and Scott from Facebook. Thanks for taking out the time to speak to the panel. A big round of applause for them. So let's get started, and let's start with the audience. When we say about advertising, what is the one thing that comes to your mind? Anyone? When advertising comes up, what comes to your mind? Money? Absolutely. Anything else?
Nothing is free.
Nothing is free.
You are the product.
Yep.
Waste of time.
Waste of time.
Connecting with the user.
Connecting with the user. Conversions. Engagement.
The house always wins.
The house always wins. Anything else? Awesome. I think that's good to have all those words and phrases out there. Definitely, I think advertising has a lot of this, and we'll discuss a lot of that in the next 60 minutes. The structure of this discussion, we're going to have a focused Q&A for the next 45 minutes. And after that, we'll open it for audience questions. Probably till we have audiences having questions, we'll keep going, but definitely we'll wrap up the panel discussion by 8:15. So before turning it over to our panelists, just to gauge the make of the audience and your background, by show of hand, how many people are currently working in the advertising industry? Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely an informed audience already. And how many of you are already aware of some of the advertising buzzwords around SSP, DSPs, RTB, Lumascape? Yep. Few of the people who are in the industry. So we'll have a ground rule over here is that whenever we have that acronym comes up, I'll request the panelists to pause for a while and help describe those acronyms for education in terms of what that exactly means. So with that, I'll just turn over to our panelists and we'll start with the first question. I'd request each of you to introduce yourself, highlighting what are the products and solutions you work on, and if you can include some of the resources, blogs, and other sites that you use to keep up with the industry. I think that will be helpful for the audience to know more about the advertising space. So we'll start with Philip.
So, see if these are loud enough. Can you guys hear us?
Almost.
No? What about now? Okay, thanks. So my name is Philip Smolin. I'm the head of market solutions for Turn. Turn is a cloud marketing platform provider. In essence, what that means is we provide a SaaS platform for data management, advertising execution, and marketing data warehousing to global advertising agencies and Fortune 500 brands. In terms of the resources that we tend to kind of stay in touch with for awareness of the industry, I think everyone up here probably reads AdExchanger. AdExchanger.com tends to be the closest to the pulse of what is changing within the real-time bidded, or RTB, ecosystem. Number of other publications that are a little bit more advertising industry specific, such as Ad Age, eMarketer certainly provides a lot of insights about the industry. Number of other resources, but AdExchanger is probably the one that stands out. That if you want to stay on top of the trends that are occurring right now, that is right at the leading edge.
Hi, my name is Sunil and I'm co-founder of XAD. XAD is a location advertising company. We provide a platform for the buyers to buy location or quality inventory where they can put their ads. And we do it in a way that results in greater number of people walking into their stores. So this question, someone said conversion. So we're able to kind of track where the ad was placed, and then eventually if the user actually walked into your store or not. So that's the technology. We've been around for 4 years. We started in San Francisco, but moved our offices to New York. We had a very nice year last year. In terms of the blogs, I think AdExchanger is a great site, and I look at it every day. Besides that, Business Insider, tech section specifically, and the Media Post, other two that I usually go to.
Great, Dia Jolly. I work at Google in the product org. I head up I work in display ads, head up our audience solutions targeting efforts, and what that means for you is try to figure out who the person behind the screen is, so that we don't waste your time and we actually serve more relevant ads that actually make a difference and are actually useful and connect with the user. In addition to that, also manage the product teams for our Gmail advertising and social advertising efforts. In terms of industry blogs, I think actually Philip covered it very, very well. AdExchanger and Ad Age are the two that I rely on a daily basis.
All right. Hi, I'm Scott Shapiro. I work at Facebook. There we go. On the ads team. I've been there for about 3 years. I have worked on a number of different products from different types of ad units. I don't know if you guys have seen the one where you log out of Facebook and there's a big ad. I worked on that a few years ago. I've also worked on our Ad Exchange, Facebook Exchange, SPX. And most recently, I've been working on more strategic projects around where are we going as an ads ecosystem company over the next few years. So I'm less tied to individual products today. In terms of reading, I think there's two other sources in addition to what these guys said. all of which are really good. I read Hacker News, which is run by Y Combinator Paul Graham, and it's crowdsourced. I often don't even read the articles, I go right to the comments. It's about a lot of topics, some of which you guys have had events on, like Bitcoin and cloud computing and big data and all that stuff. But there's often really insightful comments on there on advertising, like Reddit without all the trolling. Tech Meme is also really good too. Again, because it's kind of an aggregator, it's a meta site that is looking across Twitter and everywhere these links are being shared to find the stuff that's really buzzing. So that's one source, it's kind of these aggregators. I think another source is really companies that are doing advertising and listening to what they're saying. Facebook has a blog called Facebook for Business. It's good, it's new, it's moving. DoubleClick has some great blogs on Blogspot that are facing both advertisers and publishers. Even Twitter, I think their blog is great in the way that they talk about the ad products that they're launching, and kind of the way they're positioning them and messaging the capabilities to both users and to advertisers tells you a lot about what's happening and what the trends are and what they're actually trying to achieve. And of course, earnings calls, which are very much a financial discussion, but this week and next week are a lot of earnings calls by companies who make a lot of money from advertising, and you can kind of hear what they're doing, and analysts ask a lot of telling questions to CEOs and COOs.
Thanks, everyone. So it's, for the next question, we'll start with Scott. I think in the advertising circle, there's this famous quote by a gentleman named John Wanamaker, who was a retailer in New York. And 100 years back, he said that half of the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. So with the 21st century tools and technologies and the focus on advertising, how have things changed? What is the current state of affairs when it comes to advertising?
Yeah, that's. I'm glad we have an hour and a half for this panel. I think that touches on a key theme, which is measurement, right? So if I'm spending money on ads, how do I know if they're working? Internet advertising has been around for almost 15, 20 years now, and only recently have we had the capabilities to understand how internet advertising is actually affecting real consumer behavior in stores, on the shelves, making real purchases. And so I think one of the big trends that we'll start to see is more and more advertising being held accountable, not by measures like the number of clicks on the ads or the number of impressions, the number of eyeballs that we're seeing, or the click-through rate, or these kind of traditional ad metrics that were very popular and are still popular today. But I think we'll see a lot more real understanding of I spent $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, or even maybe $100, and I can actually say that these people came into my store, or these people bought airline tickets, or these people saw this movie specifically because of a single ad campaign or multiple ad campaigns that I do. It's really, really complicated. It's very hard to do right. It requires a lot of systems to talk to each other. But I think that that's going to be a huge trend, real offline measurement, in-store sales, instead of kind of proxies or approaches or estimations for these types of outcomes.
So I think, so I agree with Scott, and I think if you look at this 100 years back, basically advertisers put their ads in a magazine or a newspaper, and people bought those magazines and newspapers, but it was never clear, did you see the ad, did you actually go to that page, did it resonate with you? Coming to television, you know there was somebody watching the television show. It's unclear who in the house, was it the kid, was it the dad? From there, we've now come to, okay, I know there's a person clicking the ad or viewing the ad, but I have some intelligence about the person because I know the kind of sites they visited on the internet. It's still a cookie to what we're coming to now, which is where I think Scott was. There's a lot more emphasis on who is this person? Did they actually did they just click on my ad, go to the store, or did they actually buy something? in direct response advertising, which is basically, I want to be able to track and make the sale, right? I want to know that the sale was made. This concept has been there for a while. It's been there in search advertising, right? I spend $100, how much do I get back for it? So I think that's also being now, there are also being ways of being able to measure that offline for brand advertising, but that's generally, I think, where the industry is moving and has progressed over like the last 100 years.
Sunil, from XAD, and you focus on local, how do you see the performance and ROI from advertiser perspective?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the problem I think has shifted, like you said, it was an offline world and you really didn't know if the user has saw your ad or not. And with all the new technology, and we're just seeing newer problems that we have to keep solving for. And we focus a lot on mobile location advertising, and one thing that we are realizing is we're seeing a lot of location fraud happening in the advertising industry, where the publishers or the users are saying I'm here at this location, but they're not really there. So, and then a lot of the ad serving technologies are actually targeting users in New York, thinking that they're in San Francisco or there's 1,000 miles away. And our data says that we actually filter about 70% of those our suspect locations. They're coming into our system, so we're discarding a lot of the inventory. So again, I think it goes back to the measurement, and eventually the good part is because we're looking at from a conversion standpoint, any waste that is coming through, eventually it will dilute your conversion process. So it will affect your metrics in some way. So the good thing is that people are looking at the metrics, they're looking at the ROI, and what we can do best is to kind of eliminate that from at the downstream only before it kind of reaches the advertisers, and that is where we are aggressively moving and investing a lot in providing cost per visit metric to the advertiser, that you can actually figure out that what was my cost of actually bringing a user to the store. If I'm really targeting a user who is in New York, but you're thinking he's in San Francisco, he will never go to the store. So that will be really dilute the metric. So CPV is a new metric that our company is really.
What is that?
I'm sorry, what?
Cost per visit.
Oh,
CPV.
Yeah, cost per visit. Yes, that's another metric that we are selling to all the retailers, because that's what really matters. That you spend $1 million, and with all the technology that we're providing, I drove 10,000 users to your store, and then you can figure out then what it really means. And retailer knows that if a user walks into my store, the user is worth $50, $10, $20, depending on their average.
So on that front, I think, Philip, if you can touch upon a lot of these for the CPG and the retail industry, it is a measurement based into the footfall into the stores. How does that maps into other industry, let's say auto, which probably have a much longer cycle or a purchase cycle?
Well, as Scott was saying at the beginning, which is spot on, measurement is the foundational concept here. I mean, everyone in this room has some version of this in your pocket. When you go home, you're going to use, either an iPad or an Android-based tablet. You'll probably watch TV while you're doing that. We're all connected in ways that we never were before. The quote you started with, I want to make a quote about, I don't know where I'm getting half the value or where the dollars are going, was a function of that time and a lack of measurability. And now we have that measurability, and we have it on two ends. We have it at the beginning of the process, where the ad impressions are shown, where the ad impressions are purchased, and we're improving on it at the end of the process. So CPG, an example would be Kimberly-Clark. So in some of the technology and services we provide to Kimberly-Clark, what Kimberly-Clark will do, what they have been doing, is they will run brand awareness surveys concurrently with their digital advertising. That is their measure of success. So it's digital advertising, but they don't care about the clicks, and they don't care about actions in the online sense of direct response. They care about whether people are more aware and inclined to buy Huggies diapers after having been exposed to multiple impressions of advertising or not. And so that data is now being measured, whereas previously it couldn't be. And that's not only being used for analytics, but it's also being used to influence and inform the buying process itself. The algorithms are using that data to make purchasing decisions. So compared to 100 years ago, it is a fundamentally different model that advertisers work with in today. But now you deal with a different set of problems. And the problems that you have to deal with now are about scale of data, this elusive term of big data. There are well over 1 million advertising impressions every second that Kimberly-Clark has to evaluate to decide whether they want to purchase. And automotive, very similar to CPG, because they're not driving to online car sales. They're delivering to, their objectives are around brand awareness and influence over time that almost always are going to be offline sales. So there's still a lot of plumbing, if you will, that's being built out to connect these different types of measurement in the online and offline world. So there's still a lot of evolution the industry is going through. So it's gone very far in the last 100 years. There's still a lot of change that's occurring.
That's definitely reassuring to hear in terms of, and I think we touched upon multiple things in this discussion. Measurement, I think that was the common theme that is defining the current state of affairs when it comes to advertising. And we have measurement because of big data, a lot of data, measurement, more accurate measurement, probably because of better data science and algorithms. So moving forward, what are the things that we anticipate will be the big trends and innovations that is going to innovate, change the face of advertising? Measurements and are going to, a lot of innovations are going to build upon the current capabilities of digital measurements. What are the other avenues of innovation that we anticipate in the next couple of years?
So if 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, advertising was 95% art and 5% science, some statistical measurement. That's rebalancing. And it's not going to be 100% science, but it's going to be 50-50 or maybe even 80-20 towards science. And the technologies and the evolutions are what comes after measurement. It's how do you process that data that's coming in, ultra high volume data processing, doing that in real time, literally within milliseconds in order to take an observation about a consumer's behavior and to incorporate that into machine learning and control theory and game theory-based algorithmic strategies to influence buying decisions that are being done programmatically as opposed to manually. And all that happens in real time. So the technologies that are needed behind that are very, very heavy within data warehousing, within statistical sciences, machine learning. So much more of the decisioning is being driven by algorithms and outputting intelligence to be interpreted by humans who are making much more strategic decisions from that data. But it's all about the data and how these systems connect together to be able to transfer data around.
So is it, so if just to continue on that, is the world of advertising is moving more and more towards machines than humans? Because in the past, if you look at, a lot of the advertising was driven from a human angle. Are we seeing a lot of the machines are going to drive the decision from an advertising perspective?
A significant percentage, a minority percentage still, but a significant percentage of the advertising dollars online are now transacted. The decisioning, the buying decisions are made by algorithms. And it's probably a little early in the evening to start getting some of the things that are happening around programmatic direct and some of those other evolutions that are occurring. But you will see over the coming, whether it's 3, 5, or 10 years, probably more like 80 to 95% of those buying decisions will be driven by algorithms. There will still be people behind them who are driving the car, who are steering the, pushing the pedal, steering the wheel, but they are telling algorithms what to do, and then algorithms are using data at a scale that humans simply cannot.
For the audience, if you can explain a little bit what was programming direct.
Does anyone want? I'm happy to. But, okay. So over the last several years, one of the primary evolutions in the industry has been this acronym of RTB, or real-time bidding. And basically what that means is spot auction market, where a publisher, someone who's generating an advertising impression, is putting that up for sale, and in real time, many advertisers can use data-driven algorithms in order to evaluate, do they want to buy it, and if so, how much are they willing to bid on it? That's what the algorithms do. But the traditional advertising industry has not been driven by spot markets. It's actually been driven by the concept of forward contracts or guaranteed buys, or what you might hear as upfront buys, like TV upfronts. That's a very different model, and that's where a buyer is making a commitment to spend a certain amount of dollars, a certain price, in the future, and it's a guarantee. And so you'll start hearing this year a new term called programmatic direct. And programmatic direct refers essentially to taking that other legacy business model of upfront sales and bringing that into the programmatic buying layer, where it's going to be more influenced by algorithms, more data-driven, but it's not the spot market model that is real-time bidding.
Can you give a name of a product? Maybe we can go and buy that?
Think of it more as a set of features that will be available from the demand-side platforms, or DSPs, that service the buyers, and the sell-side platforms, or SSPs, that service the publishers.
Thanks, Will. We have been very, very careful in expanding the acronyms, and that's very helpful for the audience. So Sunil, from the local advertising perspective, what are the new things that we could expect in the next couple of years?
And again, I think even location is kind of moving more towards programmatic buying as well. Some of the things that we're working on is just trying to kind of figure out in real time the value of location inventory. So the fact that you're 2 miles away or 3 miles away, and you are a male, you belong to this segment, advertiser wants to put a value on you, and there is an expected value, which is determined in real time. And more and more we invent on the attribution side, we're able to figure out that why a user actually walking into the store, what is the reason behind this, and what are the characteristics of that event. Easier it will be for us to kind of put a value on it. So from a Excel standpoint, I think we are actually incentivizing to publishers who are bringing quality inventory in real time. We're able to figure out that your location score on 0 to 10 is 9. So I'm gonna bid, and you're gonna likely result into a store visit at this probability. So our bidding models are very scientific in that sense, and what it's doing in the marketplace is actually eliminating a lot of the supply that is sending low quality location inventory. And actually it's good for the publishers because the ones that are actually sending good location are getting rewarded for that. So that's where we're heading as well. I think 2015 will be a lot of programmatic buying for us as well. We are a DSP, and which is demand side platform for national brands as well as small businesses. So they all come to us and they're saying, okay, I want to buy 25 visits from this area, San Francisco. Or they want to come and say, oh, I want to get 25 calls from my business. I'm a dentist, I can serve 25 more customers. So they're coming to us and say, I want to buy 25 more calls. So that becomes an action, and then we go and find programmatically that, okay, who are the users who are likely going to generate this, and how much I want to pay for this supply. And so that's where most of the So I agree, the programmatic will be more like 80-90% in the next couple of years. Yeah.
Great. And since you brought up the topic of publishers, so in context of publishers, how does things change for them from in the programmatic world compared to the previous world?
I think there is more consistency, programmatic, there is more sustainable, your revenues are more sustainable because programmatic, you're actually paying for the value. The buyer knows what the value is versus, everything is fluff. Companies are getting valuated at, 1x multiple, 2x multiple because you really don't know if you can sustain that revenue next year or not. So I think programmatic, brings some clarity in the marketplace. And publishers that are trying higher conversions, it comes out open in the marketplace, and they benefit from it. And those who are not doing, they can take the right actions. If they're thinking of monetizing through advertising, and they're not doing something wrong, they are, either polluting the market, and it's become just very open. So I think it's actually good for the publishers.
Thank you. So Diya, from a lot of the innovation that we see in the last few years around real-time bidding, RTB or programmatic, I think a lot of that was enabled when we allowed programmatic buying on exchanges. So going forward, what's those trends? Is there anything new that is going to change that we have not seen yet, or there's a lot of things that will be made available on top of what is built today?
So I think when you think of exchanges, what that basically means is advertisers or publishers are pooling their or giving their inventory in and then into an exchange, and then you can essentially, the advertiser can essentially go and buy pieces of that inventory. If you think about what Philip said, which is programmatic direct, it essentially changes the exchange model and brings it closer to the direct model. So really what happens there is, as a publisher, you can say, I will invite X number of advertisers, right? And those advertisers can buy on my inventory. So I think you'll find these hybrid models, and this again goes back to like programmatic direct. You find these hybrid models that become where more and more of the revenue goes over time. So that's one of the things. The other things is we're seeing a lot of, when you look at exchanges, previously you're seeing a lot of regular desktop inventory, right? As time goes forward, people are spending more and more time on mobile, right? That's where most of the eyeballs are. That's where most of the monetization happens. You will see more and more features and tools to help advertisers be able to monetize the eyeballs on mobile. So for example, location is one example of that, right? So for example, there will be more location-based features. There will be more ad units potentially that are more mobile specific. Today, when you're sitting and thinking of a solution for advertising, the first thing you think of is like, how does this work on mobile? It's almost become mobile first, as opposed to let's think about traditional web and then think about mobile. So those are the things that I think you see changing.
And you highlighted about desktop and other screens. So a lot of us have multiple screens. Right? We use our laptops or desktops at work. We probably use our phone on our way back home, and probably use a tablet at home for browsing, and may use a connected TV to watch TV. How is that cross-screen aspect changes advertising?
So that's actually a very good point. So I mean, there's been a lot of efforts in the industry and innovation in the industry and trying to figure out, are you the same person that was behind the desktop versus the mobile phone versus the tablet, right? And how do we do this in a way where we don't violate anybody's privacy and in a way that's still acceptable by the consumer? What that does is it actually gives advertisers the ability to know when they reach you multiple times. So for example, today it's really hard to measure how many times you reach someone across screens. It also gives the advertiser something else that I think is very, very powerful, which they've done in TV for a very long time, but hasn't completely taken off on the web yet, which is the ability to build a story for you, right? So what we call storyboarding. So knowing that you're the person that woke up in the morning and saw my ad on mobile, I could be giving you one message, whereas in the evening you're returning home, or during the workday you're seeing something. You can think about, when you think about brand advertisers, you actually could be building a story not just over a day but over multiple days, and that's yet another thing that's that makes, I mean, that benefits advertisers. The third thing obviously is, and this is so obvious that I didn't bring it up first, but is data. You can now pool data from different devices. You can now get a better picture of the user and who they are across the entire day.
So moving on to probably next set of innovation, social and mobile. So Scott, and we had an earnings call yesterday. What's happening there? What's going to be big in that?
Does Facebook care about mobile advertising?
Yeah, I think a lot of the programmatic direct, cross-screen, like all of this stuff is huge. I want to touch on that. I want to kind of zoom out a little bit just to kind of set the perspective, and then I'll dive into, I guess, the social mobile sandwich. One thing that's interesting is if you think about this weekend, the Super Bowl is on Sunday. I'll probably watch a little bit. I don't actually have TV at home or cable. I got rid of that 3 years ago. And a lot of people are doing this, right? A lot of people don't have TV anymore. Maybe they watch Netflix or Apple TV. But you have these brands that are spending $3-4 million for a 30 or 60-second commercial. They might run 3 or 4 or 5 of them and spend $20 million in one day to reach all these people on the Super Bowl. And if you're selling beer, right? If you're not over 21, or maybe you start drinking beer when you're 16 illegally, right? A lot of that audience that's watching that commercial is not in market, has no idea. Maybe you're influencing them for 5-10 years later when they can buy beer. If you're selling trucks, right? A lot of people watching that commercial are not at all relevant. And so you have this mass media device, right? That's just pure tonnage, right? It's the biggest splash you could possibly make. It's the Super Bowl, watched around the world. But so much of that you could call wastage, right? Because people are watching these commercials. A lot of people don't even watch the game, they just watch the commercials. But most of the commercials, right, if you watch the Super Bowl on Sunday, most of the commercials have nothing to do with anything you're interested about. And so I think there's a big shift into the idea of what we call content personalization, where more and more the content that you consume is personalized for you. Not just ads, right, but everything, because you're curating your Twitter followers, your Facebook newsfeed is kind of algorithmically personalized to you. Your recommendations on YouTube are personalized to you, but also the ads that come with that. And kind of one of the principles that we have at Facebook is that ultimately the ads should not feel like ads. They should feel like things that your friends are sharing. They should be as relevant, as interesting, as compelling. They should bring you back to the newsfeed, just like wedding and baby and engagement stories do. So I think that's one major trend. I think the other thing too, and this is kind of zooming up really high, kind of the industry structure. Has anyone worked in an ad agency, an advertising agency? One person. So ad agencies employ hundreds of thousands of people worldwide to make decisions. And they're not making the kinds of decisions that algorithms would necessarily make, because they're deciding things like, what is this brand about? What kind of people are we trying to reach, and what TV shows should we advertise on? Not all of that can be done algorithmically today, maybe in a few years it can. But you have these very large organizations that grew up at a time when the decisions that were made were really around which magazines, billboards, radio shows, and then ultimately TV shows do we advertise in. And when you look at the world of kind of programmatic buying and algorithms, a lot of those skills are not really useful. Because instead of saying, well, I think that Super Bowl is mostly men and they kind of are older and they might be college educated, so I'll just advertise that. You can actually target the exact people that you're interested in targeting. And so another one of the principles we have at Facebook, and I think are embodied in the product some of the other folks up here work on, is really the idea of reaching true people based on their true identity and not these approximations. I'm not advertising in a magazine because I know that only females read it. I know that 25% is read by men and they're not going to care about my ad, but it's the best thing I can do, so I'll advertise there. Right? In digital advertising and what we call addressable media, you can reach the exact people that you're interested in, and you can prove that and measure that you're actually reaching the people that you care about. So that's definitely a big thing about people. I think the last thing is that mobile is growing fast. Tablets are growing fast. Desktop usage for everyone is declining, and so much so that I think mobile, at the end of the year, at the end of 2013, surpassed laptop and desktop usage in terms of time spent. Right? So this brand new form factor that most people didn't really have 10, 15 years ago, and maybe 5 years ago they started getting something that had a QWERTY keyboard or a touchpad, is taking more time than any other media that's out there. Mobile plus desktop today is greater than TV. This is the first time in 50 years that a new medium has surpassed an old medium. This happened, I think, in the 60s when TV passed radio, and now digital has passed TV, right? So there's this huge shift. It's all being driven by mobile. Social is interesting as a type of application, right? Facebook and Instagram are considered social apps, but the advertising that can be done in those apps is just as effective, just as compelling, and can embody a lot of the same tactics and principles as any other types of advertising.
Great. I think you touched upon a lot of things here. So I heard about programmatic, cross-screen, data, algorithms, social, mobile. So with all of this as the trends and the innovations that there are a lot of things that will happen in these areas, what are some of the things, the balancing act or the challenges that we may have? So you mentioned about addressable media and better targeting through data. How does the balancing with privacy plays into this?
Yeah, I mean, privacy is probably our number one concern with advertising. I spend a lot of time with our kind of legal and policy folks, and luckily we're in a very good position with that. And so, we've always made sure that every product that we work on is very, very sensitive to the user experience and to privacy. We take very deliberate, considerate approaches to everything that we're doing, whether it's targeting, whether it's measurement, whether it's kind of behind the scenes optimization. There were some things early on, I think, that got us in a little bit of hot water, and so we learned the lesson very, very quickly before my time. That we needed to treat privacy as number one. The privacy industry, I think, is almost as exciting as just kind of the advertising industry as a whole. There's a lot of self-regulation going on. There's been a lot of interesting political stuff in the state of California, in the European Union, and Ireland, where a lot of international companies have their European headquarters and are subject to laws there. And then you have some countries where there really are no laws about privacy, where nothing is really that important, and kind of the idea of just even having your own personal space isn't the same as kind of what we look at here in the US or even the UK. So it's evolving really rapidly. I don't know exactly where we'll end up. I think we're all behaving well, and as such, kind of the government lets us self-regulate and work together to figure out the principles that we need to do our jobs effectively.
Great. And in terms of other challenges, they mentioned, we talked about cross-screen, and a lot of this audience targeting traditionally has been done through cookies, and probably advertising world has a different meaning for cookies, special meaning for cookies, when basically it's a small file on the browser that stores some information that allows advertising companies and publishers to better know their audiences and to show more relevant ad. When we go to cross-screen, there is the traditional support of cookie in the way of browser cookie. They no longer exist, particularly in case of native apps. And the sense of those cookies even in connected TVs are probably even doesn't exist. How does data and understanding of the audiences are going to be made possible in absence of those cookies, or to put it in the other way, are cookies dead?
Good luck.
So cookies have been dying for a long time, right? So I don't think cookies are dead, but I think someone touched on this earlier. We are shifting into a world where more and more people are logged into more and more devices. So for example, when you're on the phone and you're on your Facebook app, you're logged in. When you're on the phone and you're in Gmail, you're logged in, right? When you're on the desktop, you usually have your email browser up and you're logged in, and your real identity is known. So cookies served, so more and more advertising is being geared towards more and more data is being targeted towards your actual, let's say, logged in true identity versus your cookies. Now, that obviously raises a bunch of privacy concerns. You don't want to be logged in and have everyone know everything about you. So there's a balance there. I don't think cookies are dead anytime, but there's definitely a movement towards identifying the actual person either through their identity on their email, through their identity on apps that make them log in, etc., and being able to use that to connect across screens. There are efforts that also try to connect cookies to your devices or your device ID. So each mobile phone has a unique device ID. So what's your device ID on the phone, and what's the corresponding cookie on a desktop? So some of these things are going on, but by far the biggest shift is considering you as a logged in as one person across your screen and knowing that.
Great. And continuing on the challenges that we face, I think, Sunil, you mentioned about fraud in some of the inventory. How big is that issue?
About 60-70% of the inventory is sending incorrect location. And just touching on the cookie subject, we are looking at location as a new cookie because this whole concept of mobility is not just about having a mobile phone. It's about you're moving to, you're always moving. Either you're using your cell phone or your laptop or your tablet. You are connected to the internet, and you are sharing your location with advertisers constantly. You're using Pandora. You're using, MapMyFitness. Whatever you're doing, you're sharing your location all the time. So advertisers, can profile without really knowing what you search for. That what are you really doing? You're going to Best Buy. You're going to Macy's. And you go to Office and you do this. So that is really a very good proxy for cookie, and that doesn't really need any technology. We already know that who you are and what you are looking for. Add social to it. I think social content is very powerful. You mix the social content tells about your behavior, what you're looking for, what you're excited, what kind of things you talk about, and you mix it with the location where all you go. I think there is a cookie right there. And that doesn't need to be installed on your phone.
Are fraud traffic also have cookies? That's something different.
We don't look at that way. I think the fraud in our language is, a publisher is telling that this user is sitting in Santa Clara. And we take a look at that and say, okay, it looks like I'm getting 50 million requests from the same location. And it's like same lat long. Or I'm getting 50 million requests from a place called Potwin, Kansas, because there is a data center sitting there. So, or some location got converted from IP addresses. So user is not really there. They're at least 5 miles away, 50 miles away, or 3,000 miles away. So we have developed techniques that can flag obvious things, but also something that's, you're at least a mile away. So I will not give you 5 out of 10, but I'll give you maybe 7 out of 10. You're still kind of not within my targeting area. Because advertisers, specifically, one thing that we sell to advertisers is we sell events. So if a football game is going on, and so we are selling them, okay, I'm going to target every user that is in the football game or in the nearby bars. So if I'm off by half mile, then I'm targeting a totally different area, and my value proposition is gone. So we pay very careful attention to, and I kind of divide segment into location into different tiers, and the highest quality tier, is usually used for these kind of targeting.
Thank you. Do you want to add to that, Philip?
Yeah, so you were asking about fraud, and a couple of thoughts come to mind. Number one is, I think it's worth noting, every industry has fraud of some type. And the question is, how much fraud is there, or is it being held at a reasonable and a manageable level? So are there issues with fraud in the advertising industry? Absolutely. There's fraud in basically every direction of the transaction that you can have. But what you largely find is that if you use measurement properly about what occurs after buying ad impressions, if you use that data properly, it kind of takes most of the fraud out of the equation. It brings it down to such a small rate where it's just part of the friction of the business, and it doesn't really change any of the basic ROI. And that's because what will happen is that good measurement tells, algorithms that learn what to buy and what not to buy. So you can have a lot of upfront attempts at fraud, but it quickly gets suppressed out of the buying process by algorithms. And so that's kind of one of the, almost consider it like a fringe benefit of the algorithmic strategies. And you also asked about the relationship, with like cookies and fraud. I think having a discussion around cookies, it's almost a little bit of a red herring. There are two base issues, two basic kind of topics. One is tracking. Cookie is a mechanism for tracking, and those mechanisms are going to evolve over time. It may be ID for advertisers, or what's called an IDFA. It may be a device ID, it may be a subscriber ID, it may be a user ID when that person is known. But there are going to be different tracking mechanisms, and this is an industry that is going to use a variety of tracking mechanisms. Cookie sucks. I mean, the cookie was a hack to start with. It was never intended for advertising, but it's something that was basically hacked for tracking, and it's continued for a while. So it needs to die at some point, and it will. But really what that whole cookie discussion is about is privacy. and about consumer control. And when we talk about social advertising and search advertising, which are both types of native advertising, if any of you have heard that term, the whole idea behind native advertising is to make it more relevant, to make it more endemic, and at the end of the day, if we make advertising more effective, and I forgot, someone over here said a word at the beginning about advertising was either ignored or ineffective, or it was a negative.
Waste of money.
What was that?
Waste of money.
Waste of money. Good advertising is not a waste of money. Good advertising is part of the content experience. Good advertising drives revenue for the publishers, which keeps the internet free. And good advertising drives ROI for the advertisers. And so part of the burden and the challenge, the opportunity for the industry is to make advertising more relevant and more effective. And when it becomes more relevant and effective, a lot of the privacy concerns go down, and the tracking mechanisms become a secondary and separate, just technical conversation.
Thank you. And definitely it is very clear that the industry is moving very fast. Of course, there are challenges. Good thing that some of the best minds and brains are in the industry to solve these challenges and continue the high growth from the industry perspective. My question to all of the panelists is, what is that one thing that is not going to change? There are a lot of things that are moving. There are a lot of things that is going through a change. What is that one thing, according to you, that's not going to change in the foreseeable future when it comes to advertising? We'll start with Scott.
The one thing that will never change or not change in what, like 5-10 years?
Pick yours.
Yeah, wow, there's so many things. I mean, we talked about a lot of trends already. I think in the next 5 years, we'll still see, I'll give two answers. I think the short term, we'll still see TV hold on tight. Everyone has been predicting that TV spend, which is the biggest chunk of the $500 billion that are spent annually in ads, that people are watching less TV, and so that the amount of spend on TV is going to start to fall. People are watching fewer and fewer live shows. They're recording shows, or they're watching them on demand, which has fewer or no commercials. There's fast forwarding through commercials, and it's held on. And I think everyone in digital who's been kind of waiting for that iceberg to melt and flow into display, has been a little disappointed. So I think that's going to continue to hold on, and I think there will be a sharp inflection point, probably 3 to 5 years out from now, when it really starts to change, because a lot of the things that Philip and others were talking about, with relevance and measurement and effectiveness and all of this, starting to work. I think things that'll never change. It's hard. I mean, one thing that's kind of hokey that has never changed is that whenever there's a new medium, and this kind of touches on the fraud thing a little bit, but calling it fraud is mean, so I won't call it fraud. The first movers are always the ones that make you the most uncomfortable. Right, so when search started out, there were tons of advertisers who jumped on board and said, we're gonna sell life insurance and pills from Canada, and then they slowly got crowded out by real legit companies who had real objectives and were selling real products, and weren't kind of on the borderline. Facebook ads, when Facebook ads started out, if you guys remember in kind of 2007, 2008, there were a lot of these like muffin top, belly fat ads, a lot of weird stuff. We did a lot of efforts to get rid of that. And when you see these new mediums, these new media come alive, the first movers are always the ones, right, who are trying to squeeze out something out of the system. They're not maybe adding much value. They could be called affiliates or arbitrageurs. But I think that'll never go away. I think you'll always have that gap before the big budgets that are controlled by large teams that take a long time to make up their mind about